One of the less serious aspects of the tragic violence in the Middle East has been the slew of celebrities queuing up to call for peace in a very public manner. Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon led the way this week by taking part in a 5-day hunger strike in demand of a ceasefire, although critics pointed out that her commitment to the cause was undermined by the fact she only managed 2 of the 5 days. So are we being cynical if we occasionally doubt the motivations of these well-meaning Hollywood do-gooders, or should they get back to their mansions and leave things like this to the United Nations? Well, joining me live from New York to discuss this, the entertainment journalist and author Nelson Aspen. Nelson, welcome to the show. So this hunger strike, only 2 days out of 5, I mean, it's a well-intentioned gesture, isn't it? But it's very easy to mock.
Yes, well, of course it is, because a 2-day fast is just like an intermittent diet craze or a cleanse. It certainly isn't the 5-day hunger strike that other people were participating in. And now, don't get me wrong, I love Cynthia on Sex and the City, but she has difficulty reading the room. She tried unsuccessfully to run for the governorship of New York State and failed. She resurrected her character on the Sex and the City reboot and took it way, way woke, and her diehard fans rejected that interpretation, so she failed there. And I don't quite understand the celebrity need to be heard. Of course you can have a position. This is a free country. You can have any position you like, but the desire to have to get up on a soapbox and talk about it, she could have just marched. She could have just been hungry. I don't understand why she would think that she actually has the power to influence people because of her celebrity status.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? I think a lot of celebrities aren't very politically sophisticated, but they have been granted this huge platform. And I think some of them do think that they have a responsibility to use that platform for good. It's just that some of them are a bit thick.
Well, you say use their platforms for good, and look at Gal Gadot, known as Wonder Woman. She's an Israeli citizen, and she has been very verbal and active in her pro-Israel stance. So you can understand with that, because that's her country, and she has been marvelous about that. So it really is interesting to see. But really, who cares? Who listens to a celebrity? I think it's also interesting to point out that after the 6-Day War in Israel in 1967, the Hollywood Bowl was sold out over capacity, and the likes of Frank Sinatra and Barbra Streisand were there in support of Israel. So, it's kind of like this weird trend, and now the trend has been for a lot of these artists to go pro-Palestine, and it's very distressing.
Do you think, though, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, do you think maybe it's because they're under a lot of pressure to be seen to say the right thing? I mean, I recall Taylor Swift getting in a lot of trouble for not condemning Donald Trump, and people saying, why is she so silent on Donald Trump? Does that mean she's a secret Donald Trump fan? There's that kind of pressure as well, isn't there?
Absolutely, and that's why they pay publicists and managers a fortune to help guide them, and they get into a lot of trouble when they just start speaking extemporaneously. They really do need a script, not just at work, but off work as well.
Can I ask you about your new book? Your book is called Dancing Between the Raindrops. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. It's a semi-autobiographical novel about the 1980s here in New York City. And I say semi-autobiographical because I confess I can't remember everything. So if I fictionalize it a little bit, it gives me a little bit of a dramatic license. But it is about the times here in the 1980s in New York City. I like to think of it as a sweeter time, even though we were all living here under the specter of AIDS that was prevalent then. But, when you're young, every time is happy when you're young and healthy and running around discovering life. There are a lot of celebrity connections. Princess Diana figures heavily into the plot of Dancing Between the Raindrops, because I was hired to train Princess Diana in that hot new workout of the 80s, step aerobics. And I was brought to London, and that actually kicked off my career in morning television that lasted for 3 decades. So there are some royal connections in the book as well.
Fantastic. Nelson Aspen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I mean, it is tricky, isn't it? I do feel sorry for some of the celebrities, but they are, generally speaking, not that smart politically, are they?
No, they're not. And she tried. I love that, because She tried for a 5-day fast and she managed to.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's something so rubbish about that, isn't there?
There was a politician I think it was in DC, who tried for, he only lasted for 8 hours, I think. Which is just what happens when you go to sleep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Brilliant. I mean, well...
Do you think celebrities should just keep their mouths shut when it comes to this sort of stuff?
or at least have a chat with their publicist first, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Little Mix criticised the UK government about the Syrian campaign? I mean, that was it.
Not a day goes by when I don't reflect on that.
Well, yeah, but I see that kind of thing, and I think, just sing your bad songs. I don't need you to. I don't need you to talk about. I can go on to,
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what she's read. I shouldn't judge her, but I assume she's not an expert in the Middle East.
No, absolutely, and it's such a complicated subject,
Yeah.
So I think wouldn't it be better for them, in their own interest, just to steer clear? I would have thought.
Well, I mean, this is it. But I think the problem is that you get such a massive platform.
Yeah.
You think, I've got to say something.
Well, it's also that they kind of feel they're emboldened. They feel like they're important all of a sudden.
Yeah, of
because
course
they're surrounded by people saying how wonderful and amazing and.
But
she was in Sex and the City too. Why shouldn't she have an opinion on Hamas?
I think having done Sex and the City too, she should be quiet forever, to be honest. Anyway.